appreciate everybody coming today. Later today, I'll be introducing legislation that sets a path in Medicaid unlike any other the General Assembly has pursued in some time. This reform bill sets a policy path to bend the per member, per month cost curve over time rather than set mandates. Again, this is a policy bill that sets a long-term agenda of goals within Medicaid beyond the biennial budget, governor's term, or my time in office. It's a path of legislative leadership. I applaud President Faber for demonstrating this leadership early in the process, that of the long view of Medicaid reform rather than short-term thinking. Whether or not Medicaid expansion occurs by any means is a separate issue. However, bending the cost curve in Medicaid is always solid policy. As you can see on the screen behind me, Medicaid spending in the state of Ohio has grown aggressively just since my short time in the General Assembly. I think the chart speaks for itself, but imagine, if you will, that this Medicaid cost was the cost of food for a family in the state of Ohio. How impactful that growing cost would be on clothing, gas, education, options that family may have. Thus, if reform was a stool, this bill would have 3 legs: accountability, health outcomes, and cost containment. The next chart on the screen lays out this concept. Accountability occurs in the Joint Medicaid Oversight Committee. This bicameral, bipartisan standing committee will oversee the performance of the Medicaid system and achievement of goals both in this legislation and into the future. This relationship in Medicaid between the General Assembly and the administration is a new concept. It allows for policy directives beyond politics and election results. It also makes elected officials openly accountable to both taxpayers and recipients for performance of the Medicaid system. Health outcomes are a critical goal in any health system. We have chosen population health measures as a starting point. Those 3 words, population health measures, include not only chronic diseases, but also the macro issues in public health: infant mortality, obesity, drug addiction. Rather than target certain conditions and impose legislative mandates in ways that could drive up cost and possibly not produce results, we are allowing and overseeing a process that is evidence-based, outcomes-driven, results-oriented, and builds on work already underway in the Medicaid system. Providers also share in this objective, but rather than mandate or pick winners and losers, we simply chart a course, taking the long view as a team with shared goals. And finally, maintaining an affordable Medicaid system is critical to sustaining care in Ohio. Using the lesser of the medical inflation rate is defined by a national standard known as the CPI, or a 3% growth rate. We directly target the per member, per month growth rate itself. I believe we have enough flexibility in the current system to achieve this initial objective, even though it is less than the current growth rate for employer-sponsored health care. This policy approach taken in this legislation is clear, it is simple, and it is understandable, while being powerful enough to directly impact the per member, per month growth rates in Medicaid now and into the future. As this final chart demonstrates, bending the per member, per month growth rate in Medicaid using comparable growth projections as indicated in the FAT book by Medicaid shows how maintained growth rates affect Medicaid spending. And if I could turn just to show you the red being the the Burke plan, if that's what you want to say, the reform that we want to do in Medicaid. Blue being the current trend line, again, using Medicaid projections from the FAT book. We demonstrate what this compounded savings actually means up to year 2020. It will yield in Medicaid a total savings of $8.6 billion, of which federal savings will be $5.5 billion and state savings $3.1 billion. That is important to note. As you remember, our initial objective was not only to provide quality care to Ohioans, but to protect taxpayers and not burden the federal debt in the Medicaid system. This bill also inserts the General Assembly into Medicaid oversight, not during the budget process, but on a continual basis. It provides health care to Medicaid recipients in a measurable and meaningful way. This three-legged stool approach charts long-term goals that will lead to a more stable and productive Medicaid system. I'd be happy to answer any questions.